I had this whole thing set up that was actually pretty good and I was excited about, and I had receipts and all kinds of things, and I had a whole thing. So let me at least show the receipt. So this is something somebody sent me, which shows that Zion Lux was charging $300. $300. So that's as far as that. And I mean, I'll show you some of the stuff, but like, and then I heard the news about Buffalo, and it just really destroyed everything I was planning on doing, because frankly, I don't even want to talk about Zion Lex and his silliness and stupidity. Like, I considered putting up the pictures we have of some of the victims who have been who were murdered, and if you don't want to talk about this stuff and you just came here for some entertainment, here, let's do this. Let's go ahead and show this, and it will allow you to go spend some time and take your mind off and just like laugh at our dear friend Zion Lex here. So he did a whole thing, Khazar Gematria, and like he said a bunch of stupid things. No surprise. And so 27 minutes in or something like that, he notices that he's just wrong about everything, obviously. And you can tell him notice, like, and so if you want to if you want to take your mind off this stuff and laugh at him and stuff like that, you can do that. So just start at the beginning, and all the time while he's smack talking, just recognize it's going to get here, and he's going to realize that because I am watching, he's going to get caught. So he tries to move on to something else, and then he goes to commercial break, and then he comes back and he admits that it was all wrong, and then he moves on to something else. So here's this for you. Yeah, I wonder who he thinks is watching suddenly. Attempt with all that they got. I don't need to attempt anything. You're doing it all yourself. So I'm guessing he originally got this because what I've noticed over the past week, I didn't know who this guy was a week ago. As I've been educating myself about this stupidity, I've noticed he plagiarizes a lot of stuff, and then he takes it and he plagiarizes a lot of stuff, and then he takes it and he tries to make it work with his silliness. And of course, we all know sheker ein lo reglayim, right? So you'll notice the word sheker the word lie in Hebrew, right? All the letters are actually at the end of the alphabet, right? They're three of the last letters of the alphabet, and none of them have a solid shape. If you were to actually create something that makes that shape and just try to stand it up, it'll fall over, right? So, but the word emet, the word truth, right, starts with aleph, which is the first word of the alphabet, mem, which is the second word, which is the middle, one of the middle letters of the alphabet, and taf, which is at the end of the alphabet. So emet, and you'll notice they're all solid, right? They would stand up. And that's what you know the difference between truth and a lie. The truth stands up and lies fall down, right? And so that's what he's about to find out. Well, he did find out. So I think he saw somebody do a similar thing with Edom, and then he decided, oh, I can make it happen, work with Kuzari, which of course you can't, because no matter, there's lots of ways of writing Kuzari, right? You could try writing Kuzari in lots of different ways, because obviously it's not in the Bible. But you're never going to get past the resh, which is 200. So how, and the whole time, so remember that the whole time while you're watching him smack talking, because that's what I was like, the whole time I'm watching him smack talk, I'm like, what, how is he doing this? Why is he saying this stuff? Like, he can't possibly be this stupid. And then you see it on his face when he realizes, and it's like, and then so if you need a comic relief, you can go laugh at him. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Incorrect. Yeah. Oh, am I not showing? I'm sorry. Hold on. Am I not showing? You guys didn't hear any of that, did you?
People
I'm
are
sorry.
Watching, and they will attempt with all that they got to come from you.
Okay, so
let me make a correction really quick.
Yeah.
You have the term El Gog, right, which has a numerical value of 43, right? Then you have Kuzari. The letter Resh in Kuzari is 200. 200. All right. So this is actually incorrect.
And then he just moves on, of course. So if the link is in the description, if you need comic relief, go ahead and go take a look at that, and you can laugh at Mr. Zion Lexx. But honestly, High Technique, you are new here. I do not know you. How are you doing? Honestly, like, stuff like this really bothers me. And like, I had taken notes and I had all these things to say, and it's like, and I just didn't want to bother with it. So, but I had scheduled this, and I had said, if he wants to come on, he can come on, or if any of these racist Israelites want to come on, they can come on. But honestly, yeah. So I just didn't feel like it, and I'll have to do it later, someday. Like, and but given everything that was going on, I just decided, you know what? Let's look at the white racist roots of these people, because obviously this is like, the racists agree with, and this is the horseshoe theory. I don't think that's what's going on with the horseshoe theory. Like, racists are racists are racists. And I actually, I had a whole thing, like, with Hebrew, but I'll have to do that later. But the so these black Hebrew Israelites, and the I hesitate to call them black. I hesitate to call them Hebrew, and I hesitate to call them Israelite. Um, One of the things I had thought about, I was kind of proud of, was I was going to say they're not brown Hebrew Israelites; they're clown Hebrew Israelites, and so I am going to refer to them as clowns. But there are also British, like these bad ideas are not in any way unique to the Black community. In fact, they have their origins in the British Israelism, and so there are the white racists who agree with these black racists, and they're all just racists. um, and you know, the racists like, and he calls me a racist, and it's like, but you're explicitly racist, right? So why are you insulting me by calling me a racist when you actually believe in racism? Like, this is like, racism is your bag. You are a black Hebrew Israelite. You believe that people, it really matters, like people's race is really important, and it's all about um being born a certain race, and they don't believe in conversion, right? In what the word Hebrew means, right? The word Hebrew actually means to convert, right? It means to pass over. That is what the root ayin bet resh means, right? And that's why, as a as B'nai Israel, right? To be a Hebrew, to be an Ivri, right? Lech lecha me'artzecha me'moladetecha, right? Like God said to Abraham. And I had I had a lot of stuff prepared, but honestly, um, the only reason I'm even doing this is because it was scheduled, and if a Zion Lex, because he would say, oh, he's scheduled and he's not going to thing. Do you have yellow Deli Hebrews based out of Tennessee? Honestly, you kind of do. Yeah, you kind of do. That's so. I was talking to Vocab when he came on my show about this stuff, and it's yeah, you get, so this is what you get with losers, people who have nothing to be proud of, right? They want, all their entire identity is in how, the fact that they were born, right? And like, I tell my nephews, I didn't, when my sister gave birth, I didn't go to the hospital and look at all the babies and decide, you know what, you're the cutest, or you're the smartest, or I love you because you are my sister's son. That's why I unconditionally love you, because you are my sister's son, and I I no matter what you do, you will always be my sister's son, right? So there is an element of that family relationship, right? That you have to have, that unconditional love you have to have for, obviously, your own children, for your cousins, and there is that relationship, obviously. But that's what God said to Abraham, right? And that's what it means when it says that Abraham is going to be the father of a multitude of nations, right? That Avraham, right? That's what it means to be a Hebrew. It means to lech lecha me'artzecha mimoladetecha mibeit avicha, right? So God says, go from your land, me'artzecha, right? Mimoladetecha, from the place you were born, mibeit avicha, to the house of your father, from the house of your father, to the land I will show you, right? And that is what it means to be a Hebrew, right? The word ivri comes from avar, to cross over, right? To and so when I tell my nephews, yeah, I'm always gonna love you. I'm always gonna love you just because my sister gave birth to you. That's it. That's I that love you are always going to have. But but then there's a different type of love, right? That you have for somebody who has traveled, has taken what is available to them, and they have improved upon it, right? Now, you can be born in all kinds of situations, right? Um, if you haven't, I mean, there's a lot of inspirational stories. The story of Glenn Lowry, somebody I respect intensely, very, very inspirational. He came from very humble roots, right? And to see where he is now, well, and not only did he come from humble roots, he came from very humble roots. And then, so he hasn't, he's working on his autobiography right now. And I just, I am itching to read it because of the journey this man has had in his life and the wisdom that he has. And you can see that. I mean, go watch the Glenn Lowry show. It's on YouTube. This man, I have profound respect for him. Profound respect. He is one of the top economists in the world. He and you know, some people go out there and they look specifically to find people who look like them to look up to. I think that's a huge mistake. I think that's a terrible mistake, right? Because um, anybody, you see in your family, and we all have members of our family that we love just because they're members of our family, right? And we know that these people, and sometimes they are of very high birth, and for various reasons. I mean, look at Hunter Biden. His father is the president of the United States, and he has been given every chance in this world, and he is an embarrassment of epic proportions, right? Um, so Steve says, why is Kel? I don't use the word. I usually use a euphemism at the suffix of Israel and not Ka, not like the God that is worshipped and not the God El. That is a really good question, and part of the answer to that is that in fact, um, that angel which uh, Jacob struggled with was not God. That was not God. That was right. He said, "I have seen God." Right, but actually, what happened there, and Christians who have a Christological interpretation of that misunderstand what's going on. So Yes, you are absolutely right. Kel is a generic term for God that refers to other beings. Whereas when we say Ka, right, when we refer to that holy name, it refers to Shem Havaya, right? That the Tetragrammaton, Havaya is Hebrew for being, right? Because the Tetragrammaton is in fact um, an indication. It is in a sense, right? God says, "Ehyeh asher ehyeh," I am becoming that which I am becoming. Right? It's in the imperfect. It's in the incomplete action of to be. And the Shem Havaya. So Havaya in Hebrew means to exist, to be. And that's why some people who actually know their theology will translate it in capital B being, right? We'll talk about um, God as capital B being. And if I were, in fact, making a translation from the Hebrew to English personally, that is how I would translate the Tetragrammaton as capital B being. So yes, the different names, they're very important, and they do indicate different things. My pleasure, Steve. You know that's part of the fun we have here. um, that's why I like live streaming, talking to people. And you know so I'm here to learn from other people. um, that's why I have the conversations on my channel. That's why I try to bring people who know much more than me, which is a lot of people, uh, as has been pointed out many times this week. uh, this week has been a very exciting time for my channel. My channel has grown a lot. uh, and I'm an insurance broker, so uh, not exactly some great teacher or something, but to the extent that I do know some stuff, I am glad to share it. Yeah. So what were we talking about? Oh, the British Israelites. So yeah, and that's how we got into it. The yellow yellow Deli. um, yeah, so you have these racist people, and that is not a good foundation. Well, I mean, so Chad the alcoholic, who I had on my channel, and he is a profoundly wise man, and he is incredibly wise because he has been through a lot of stuff in his life. And the reason he wears the mask on his show, on his channel, is because he is very involved, and he was, I think he would say he was saved by Alcoholics Anonymous. And so that's why he wears the mask, which is kind of funny. But he's a very wise man, and there is a base level at which you have to know that um, just because be the fact that you exist is an indication. And that was part of what I was going to talk about with Cain and Abel, right? The fact that God, so the question, and maybe, yeah, after we do this, maybe we will get into Cain and Abel. So you because the question of theodicy is incredibly important, and obviously considering what happened yesterday. And apparently there's been more. Honestly, I saw some things about Milwaukee, and I just didn't have the heart to look into what's going on there. Sometimes you just have to shut off the news, you know what I mean? uh, because it's just too much. Yeah, so this racism type stuff. Um, and so there are all kinds of Israelites, and a lot of these silly ideas that the Black Hebrew Israelites have actually come from British Israelism. And if you're actually interested in that type of stuff, someone to look into is Sir Anthony Buzzard. And Sir Anthony is actually, um, he is what's called a minor noble in the United Kingdom, and so he has a hereditary knighthood, right? So I think he's a baronet, something like that. Um, and he inherited being a knight. That's why he's called Sir Anthony Buzzard. Um, it's a minor term of nobility, um, and he so he started out with the British Israelites, right? And in the course of his learning, he advanced in his thought, and um, he became a real leader in the Unitarian Christian community. So really interesting stuff. There is an interview with him on Sam Adams's channel. It's called Transfigured. I recommend all of Sam's channel stuff, including when he had me on. And Sam's been on my channel a couple of times. Uh, I like to consider him a friend. So uh, yeah, I mean, again, like I said, sheker ein lo reglaim, right? So when you dig into that which is a lie, you end up seeing the lie. And honestly, I do hope that Zion, as he sees more and more lies, in a sense, I think God is actually freeing him from the lie, the hold that Satan has on him, because the things that he is saying are just wrong, and he is starting to realize they are wrong, right? And so hopefully God will open his eyes further so that he can see that this racialism that he has, this racism that he is participating in, it's bankrupt. It's completely bankrupt. And so British Israelism. So I'll just read the Wikipedia article. If people have questions or comments, please let me know. British Israelism, also called Anglo-Israelism, is the pseudo-archaeological belief. And unfortunately, because of all the woke stuff, Wikipedia doesn't have a similar article about how silly the the Black Hebrew Israelites are. But it talks about, and if you look into British Israelism, you will see, and the Christian identity movement. Um, so a lot of these things are very influenced by various racist groups, and they feed off each other. So the Nazis, believe it or not, the Nazis and the Garveyites have taken elements of positive Christianity, the Christian identity movement. right? All these racists, they really thrive off one another. They take ideas from each other, and because it's all based on this type of racial thinking, right? But unlike a true religion, right, which allows for people to come together despite their background, right? Allows people to live together in the service of one God. What these types of false, the sheker, these satanic beliefs, right? This is what demons do. Demons and the disciples of Satan are constantly causing people to fight against each other, right? So something that's taught in Hasidism is uh, we all have a Yetzer Tov and a Yetzer Ra, right? We all have good and evil within us battling. Uh, maybe we will do Genesis 4 and talk about Cain and Abel. It seems really appropriate for today. But we all have that. So you know what? Let's actually let me pull up Genesis 4. So this is Genesis 4, and you will notice that in fact the white supremacists especially will talk about Kenites, right? So, and I have a video on Pastor Arnold Murray, and when I was a child, watched he was on television, and I didn't know he was actually very influenced by these British Israelites, and I didn't know how influenced he was until much later, and these groups, there isn't much difference between like the Christian identity movement and the Black Hebrew Israelites and the various racialists. They use the same texts, right? So v'ha'adam yada et Chava ishto v'tahar v'teled et Kain v'tomar kaniti ish et Havaya ותוסף ללדת את אחיו, את הבל ויהי הבל רועה צאן, וקין היה עובד אדמה. Right, so Cain and Abel are born. ויהי מקץ ימים, ויבא קין מפרי האדמה מנחה להשם. והבל הביא גם הוא מבכורות צאנו, בהם וישע הוויה אל הבל ואל מנחתו. Right, so they both bring their sacrifices, and God turns towards Vayisha, towards Hevel and Minchato. And I will not get into the fact that, in fact, we see from Cain and Abel that God prefers Hevel's vegetable offering, right? Hold on. So it says minchato, right? And mincha. So Christians have this idea that there has to be blood, right? And it's actually very much not true, and you see that in the work of Jesus as well. It's not what you sacrifice, because what are you going to give God? What are you going to give God who created everything? Actually read Isaiah from beginning to end. I highly recommend it. But towards the end, right, where God says that. So when God turned towards Hevel's mincha, right? Mincha. Ve'el Kain ve'el nechato lo sha'a ve'ichar lekain me'od ve'ipolu panav, right? And when he didn't get what he wanted, right, because he thought of God as a vending machine in the heavens, that you put in your coin, and well, what happens when you put a coin in your vending machine, and you don't get what you asked for? You get angry and you start banging on the vending machine, right? And God's not a vending machine. God is not a vending machine, right? So he got mad, and his face v'yipolu panav, v'yomer Havaya el Kayin, lama chara lach v'lama naflu panecha. Why is it like this? Halo im tetiv se'et ve'im lo tetiv lapetech chatat rovetz ve'elecha teshukato ve'ata timshol bo. Right? Is it not im tetev, if you improve? I don't like if you do right. If you improve, tetiv, right? It's in the causative, in the hefil, right? If you cause it to be better, if you improve, se'et, it will be taken up, it will be uplifted, right? Ve'im lo, but if not, tetiv, you do not improve. La petach chatat robetz, at the opening, at the door, right? Sin is crouching. Shalom, Gustavo. How you doing? Let me. Right. That at the door. Where were we? Hapetach. Havlato panav. Oh, am I looking? I am not looking at the right place. I have to be careful with this. Okay. Tetiv lapetach chatat orovetz ve'elecha teshukato, right? And it's lust is for you, and this is the same word teshukah, right? That's actually used a few chapters ago. Well, how many chapters? One chapter, two chapters? Yeah, it's actually one chapter ago, where it talks about Chava, right? Her lust being for her husband, right? It's the same word teshukah, right? Ve'ata timsholbo, and notice that this is not in the command form. It's in the imperfect. It's in the incomplete action, right? It says you will, not as a command, and that's why they translate you can be its master. Ve'atatim sholbo. What is the topic? Mostly what happened in Buffalo yesterday, and trying to understand it. That's the is it bothered me a lot. I had a whole show prepared, like this was gonna be like this, and I had, like, I was taking notes. I don't usually prepare for my, but I was kind of excited about this because and then I saw Zion. I saw what happened in Buffalo, and like it just, I just couldn't do the same like show. So I decided, you know what? If you're here to watch Zion humiliated, you don't need me for that. Watch the clip in the description, right? Which we showed a little bit earlier, where Zion recognizes that he had made a mistake the whole show was like some 40 some minutes, and 30 minutes in, as you're watching, you can see he realizes, like, he realizes this isn't gonna work, and then he tries to kind of walk it off. Okay, yeah, so yeah, let's go back to Cain then. So, and it says va'ata timshol bo, and you will, in fact, because God can see, and this is what explains what's going on here better than anything else. It says vayomer Cain el havel achiv veyi biyotam basadeh veyakom Cain el havel achiv veyahargehu. Right, so they're in the field and he kills him. Vayomer Havaya El Cain, E Hevel Achicha. So God says to him, where's your brother? And he says, Vayomer Lo Yadati, I don't know. Hashomer Achi Anochi. And there's so much that could be said here, but he says, am I my brother's keeper? Vayomer Me Asiti Kol Deme Me asita, sorry, and he says, what have you done? Kol deme achichat tzoakim elai min ha'adama, right? The voice of the blood of your brother, right? This is a construct. This is one so construct forms in Hebrew. What Hebrew has is construct chains. And so when you have a construct chain, right, two or more words are put together in order to explain a sort of new concept, right? And we usually translate that as of, right? We put an of in there to try to explain the construct chain. But honestly, that doesn't really do it. But so kol deme achicha, so akim, cry out, alai, min ha'adama, from the ground. Va'ata arur, ata min ha'adama asher patzta et piha, lakachat et deme achicha miadecha. I mean, there's so much that could be said here, but the obvious question, the question of Theodicy, right, is why did God not know? Like, what's going on here? This is chapter 4 of Genesis. This is the very beginning of the Bible. What is going on here, right? So you have this God who knows everything, creates everything, right? Memitu mehaye, God is the one who gives life. He is the one who causes death, right? And Hevel brings a offering which God accepts. And Cain brings an offering that God does not accept. And Cain becomes bitter. And Jordan Peterson talks a lot about this stuff, and that's part of the reason I was thinking about Cain and Abel. But the obvious question you have to ask is, what's going on here, God? So Cain decides to kill Abel. Does God not know? Is that what's going on here? God doesn't know Cain was going to kill Abel? Why doesn't God stop Cain? As soon as he comes to murder his brother, God should stop Cain, right? God is very involved in this story. So what's going on? Like, seriously ask yourself that question. Because God is the one who's telling Cain that sin is crouching at the door. So God knows what's going to happen, right? And this is the simplest question of Theodicy. God, where are you? Cain brought a sacrifice. You didn't accept that sacrifice. Abel brought a sacrifice. You accepted that sacrifice. You saw that Cain became bitter and angry, and you warned him. What is going on here? You warned him that sin is crouching at the door. And then they're out in the field, and Cain rises up and kills his brother. Why did you allow that? And then you come and you ask Cain what happened. Don't you know? This is a very basic text. This is Genesis chapter 4. This isn't some obscure thing in the middle of nowhere in the Bible. This is the essence of the very beginning of trying to understand what Judaism has to teach, what the Hebrew Bible, what Moses has to teach. This is Genesis chapter 4. This is not, some later book in Isaiah or Esther or Ezra, right? It's at the very beginning of the Bible. So you seriously have to ask yourself, what's going on here? And honestly, when you look at what happened at Buffalo, you have to ask yourself, God, couldn't his rifle have jammed? Why didn't his rifle jam? Why? And that is an essential question that a monotheist has to ask God. And if your answer is Satan, then you're not a monotheist. If your answer is Satan, you're not a monotheist. That's Manichaeism. That's the duality, the Persian beliefs, right? No. That's not Genesis 4. That's not the Hebrew belief in a single God who is in control of everything. And I want to make sure you seriously grasp the question, and it is a real question for you. What is going on here? What is God doing? Why is God letting this happen? And it has to be a real question for you. And the answer that God is giving us free will is only a small part of that answer. It is the beginning of that answer. The fact that God allows human beings to do things which God doesn't want us to do, God tells us not to do. He doesn't stop us, right? It says, Hester Esther Panai al Hara'ah. I shall surely hide my face regarding the evil. And it's true. He hides his face regarding the evil. But why? Does God not love Abel? Does God not love Abel in order to protect him? And in fact, I was going to skip this part, but let's go back to what Cain says, and he says, "Vayomer Havayel Cain, E Hevel Achicha, where is Hevel your brother?" And Vayomer, and he says, Cain says, "Lo yadati, I don't know." And in fact, lo yadati is the complete action. It's in the perfect, right? I did not know, not I do not know. I do not know in the present tense, right? Is lo yodea, I don't know. It's lo yadati, I didn't know. Lo yadati, it was not made known to me. It's not something, right? Hashomer achi anochi, and the plain reading of that text is, am I my brother's keeper? But there's a deeper understanding to that. It says, Hashomer achi anochi. And if you drop the context of there, Hashomer achi anochi can be translated, and the Midrash translates it as, my brother's keeper is Anochi. And Anochi is one of the two ways in which it's less common. I mean, I won't go into the grammar exactly, but you will notice if you look at the Ten Commandments in the Hebrew, and this at synagogues where they have the Ten Commandments, oftentimes they have the first word of each commandment. And the first word of the first commandment is Anochi, I, Anochi, Hashem Elokecha. I am the Lord your God. Right? And if you look in the Bible, the places where it uses that word Anochi, we have a midrashic tradition of saying that on the simple level, it means whatever it means, right? But there's a deeper understanding, which is Anochi refers to Anochi, the God who spoke at the Ten Commandments. And so Anochi is one of the names, we say, of God. So he says, Hashomer achi Anochi, the keeper of my brother is God. Hashomer achi Anochi. It's your fault. It's your fault. Why didn't you stop me? I didn't know it better. I'm just a man. So what's going on here? God comes and says to Abel, your brother's blood is screaming out to me from the ground. Now, what should have happened here? What should have happened? It's very simple. What is God supposed to do here? According to all justice, it is in his power. He should kill Cain and raise Abel back up to life. That's justice. That's justice. So why isn't that happening? What's the Bible telling us? And again, this is Genesis 4. This is at the very beginning. This is an integral part of what the Torah has come to teach us. And the Torah is telling you a whole story. So what's this story telling you? Is God not just? Why does Hevel, who was a tzaddik, who was a good man, who brought the correct sacrifices, why does he die and Cain get to live? The God who created the whole world. And then God, okay, come and make it right. At the very least, kill Cain. At the very least, kill Cain. Why does Cain get to live? And not only does Cain get to live, Cain says to God, if people knew, they're going to kill me. And God says, no, I will protect you. I will not allow them to kill you. How is that justice? How is that justice? And if these questions don't bother you, you're not reading the Bible. These are simple and important questions to ask because God wants us to want justice. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof. Righteousness, righteousness. You should seek after. Tirdof means to go as if like a hunter. Right? Sur mera ve'aseh tov. Flee from evil and do good. Ohavei Hashem sinu ra. Shomer nafshot chasidav. Those who love God, sinu ra, hate evil. Shomer nafshot chasidav. He protects the lives, the nefesh, the souls of his chasidim, of those who love him. So what's going on here? Why isn't God doing that? And there's an answer. There is an answer. And the answer is God loves all his children. And in fact, Hevel will get his reward. In fact, Hevel will be resurrected. And that's why it was not a problem for the Hebrews for chapter 4 at the very beginning of our Bible to have this story and still say God is just, because we know something. We know that in fact God will resurrect the dead. And Hevel will receive his reward. And Cain will be punished. But that's not what the Bible has come to teach us first and foremost. Because the lesson of the Bible from the very beginning to the end is the same. It is a story of salvation and redemption. The first story and the second story and the third story and the fourth story, they are the same story, teaching us over and over again about salvation, about sin and salvation and redemption. Because chatat, sin, crouches at the door, and its lust is for us. But if we improve, it will be accepted. This is a story about salvation and redemption. And that's why God can allow Hevel to die. Because this world, this physical world, is not what it's about. And what the reason we are in this world is so that we may learn to know God. And Hevel came into this world and knew God, and he was accepted. But Cain has not learned his lesson. And if God were to destroy Cain, Cain would not have the opportunity to learn his lesson. And that's why we have to live in this Alma de Shikra, right? So this isn't in this. This is Alma de Shikra, and Alma de Kashuta is Aramaic. It's not Hebrew. But Sheker and Emet, right? We call this world Olam HaSheker, right? Alma de Shikra. And we call the Olam Haba, the world to come, Alma de Kashuta, the world of truth. And because that world is the eternal world, and this world is the temporary world. Sheker ein lo reglayim. Sheker just falls over. And this world falls over. Emet is forever. It has legs. It stands. It doesn't fall over. So when we look at this world, we see the sheker. We see what doesn't make sense. This isn't what God wants. Cain kills Abel, and Cain gets to live, and Abel dies. But that's sheker. That's not how it must eventually be. This is our faith. We are in the darkness here, and what we're seeing is darkness. Lahagid baboker chastecha ve'emunatcha balelot. To proclaim in the morning your loving kindness, but your faith at the nights, right? And that's what we're doing here. Gam ki elech begetz al mavet, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, lo irara ata imadi, I will not fear evil, because you are with me. Because we are walking in the valley of the shadow of death. We are walking in the darkness where we look around and we see that Cain gets to live and Hevel dies, and it's wrong, and we know it's wrong. And that's when we must have faith. In the darkness, we have to have faith. It's easy when we see things, when we see that the righteous are being rewarded and the evil are being punished. It's easy to say, thank God. It's easy to say, thank God, when we see that. Lahagid baboker chastecha. But that's when you have to have faith. Ve'emunatcha baleilot. At the nights, when we're walking through the valley of the shadow of death, Ge'etzal mavet, the valley of the shadow of death. And that's one construct. It's one thing. That's where we are. One of my favorite psalms, Shir Lamalot, a song of ascents. It says, Haloch yelech uvacho. He goes and he walks and he cries. Nose meshech hazara, during the time of the planting. Bo yavo verina, he shall surely return, nose alumotav, carrying his sheaves. And this is the time of the planting when we cry. And Yosef told me that Rabbi Sachs said this, and I trust Yosef because he knows a lot more Torah than I do. And it sounds like what Rabbi Sachs would say. If the problem of theodicy, if we could explain why we look around us and it's darkness, it wouldn't be darkness anymore. It would be light. We wouldn't feel the pain. We wouldn't cry during the time of the planting. And that's what we are in right now. We are in a time of planting. And it's hard. And it's scary. And we need our faith. And we have to ask God. So Akim, we have to cry out to God. God, min ha'adama, right? We have to cry onto God from the ground. Why is this? Why are you doing this? Why? Why is it night? I want to see the light. I want to see the dawn. I want to see the dawn. I want to see the resurrection of the dead, and I want to see the punishment of the wicked. And that's what it's teaching us. That's what it's teaching us in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 and Genesis 3 and Genesis 4 and Genesis 5 and Genesis 6. It's teaching us that we are here in this world, in this physical world, where we look around and we see shikra and we see the lies, we see the injustice, and we have a faith. We say, no, this is not right. This is not how the world should be. And that's what it means to be a Hebrew. That's what it means to be an Israelite. That's what it means to believe in Torah, the light Torah, Oraita, we call it in Aramaic. It is the light. It is the guide. It's showing us through the darkness that there will be a dawn, that there will be a resurrection, and there will be justice, and there should be justice. And we cry because we recognize that this is not justice. But we have to have the belief. Bo yavo verina nose alomotav. That he will surely come carrying his sheaves. Because without that faith, how could we go on? Without that faith that in fact God will resurrect the dead, that God will punish the evil, that things will one day be, God will rule the world. V'haita Hashem lamelech al kol haaretz. And God will be the king of all the land. That's the hope. It's a hope, it's a faith. Because if it wasn't dark, as it is dark. And we have to realize and we have to accept that. You can't pretend, right? The fool looks at the darkness and says, this is light. He looks at the darkness and he says, this is light. No, you know what? It's perfectly fine. This is justice. That's what Job's friends did. They're like, no, that, you know what? Since this is how things are, that's how it must be. So it must be right. So it must be right. That's the fool. He looks at the darkness and he calls it light. But a person of faith believes that justice will in fact rule the land, that things will be made right, that the dead will be resurrected for eternal life, and the wicked will in fact suffer for all that they have done wrong. And that is what the Bible is teaching us. That's why the story of Cain is a story of two brothers with one father. As Eve says, I have acquired a man from God. Cain is also God's child, because there is only one God. He created Cain and he created Abel. And he wants to save Cain and he wants to save Abel. And Abel came into this world and he was a good person. He gave the sacrifices that God wanted, and he was taken from this world. And God let him be taken from this world because he had earned his place in the world to come. But Cain had work to do. Cain needed to live in this world of sowing, in this world of darkness, so that he has an opportunity to repent and to make it right. Because if justice were to happen to Cain on the day of his sin, and this is the same story as Adam and Eve. God could have killed Adam and Eve, and it would have been over. You sinned against me, and it would have been over. And if you want to understand this well, my recommendation, Dr. Abramson, Henry Abramson, has a YouTube channel where he goes over history, and it's a wonderful channel. And he is a history professor first and foremost. But he also made some videos on Tomer Devorah. And Tomer Devorah is a Kabbalistic book by the Ramak, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, in which he explains God's incredible love for us as sinners. And that's what's going on here. God's patience, God giving Cain a chance, saying to him, "What have you done? Think about it. Repent." And that is, in fact, our hope. Our hope is that, in fact, the sinner will repent. How long did I go on? Wow, I've been going on for over an hour. I hope somebody likes it. Well, there are apparently 2 people watching, so I didn't scare everybody away. Yeah. Sorry, but I the massacre has been kind of hard. Okay, let's go back to the British Hebrew Israelites. Where were we? Yeah, so is the pseudo archaeological belief that the people of the British Isles are genetically, racially, and linguistically the direct descendants of the 10 tribes of ancient Israel. Where have you heard this before? with roots in the 16th century. So that's the 1500s. That's 500 years ago. British Israelism was inspired by several 19th century English writings, such as John Wilson's 1840 Our Israelitish Origin. Numerous British Israelite organizations were set up throughout the British Empire, as well as in the United States in the 1870s onwards. A number of these organizations are independently active as of the early 21st century. In America, the idea so I'm answering someone on the Discord about something sort of related. And in fact, let me also okay. Where were we? A number of organizations are independently active as of the early 21st century. In America, the idea gave rise to the Christian identity movement, and these are white supremacists. It also gave birth to the Black Hebrew Israelites. The central tenets of British Israelism have been refuted by evidence from modern archaeological, ethnological, genetic, and linguistic research. Same thing with the Black Hebrew Israelites. So, what did Steve say earlier? I really like that. Yellow Deli first. So, according to Brackney and Fine, the French Huguenot magistrates, I am not going to try to say that, the 10 Lost Tribes published in 1590. So that's 430 years ago. Provided one of the earliest expressions of the belief that the Anglo-Saxon, Celtic, Scandinavian, Germanic, and associated peoples are the direct descendants of the Old Testament Israelites. And these exact same types of things were taken up later by other people. Anglo-Islam has also been attributed to Francis Drake and King James the Sixth and First. So he was the sixth king of Scotland and the first of England, and he was, in fact, the King James. When we say King James Bible, he's the one who commissioned it, and so you will see that the Black Hebrew Israelites will claim that King James was actually black based on these same ideas. So all of these ideas, they feed off of each other. Who believed he was the king of Israel? wrote in the 17th century about his ideas on the origins of Celtic and Saxon peoples. In 1649, Sadler published The Rights of the Kingdom, which argues for an Israelite genealogy for the British people. Aspects of British Israelism and its influence have also been traced to Richard Brothers, who published a revealed knowledge of the prophecies and times in 1794. John Wilson's Our Israelitish Origin, and John Pym Yitman's The Shemitic Origin of the Nations of Western Europe. British Israelism arose in England. Sorry, I need a drink. Oh. I'm out of tea, people. I might take a break and get some tea in a little while. Where were we? Then spread to the United States. British Israelists cite various supposedly medieval manuscripts to claim an older origin, but British Israelism as a distinct movement appeared in the early 1880s. Although scattered British Israel societies are known to have existed as early as 1872, there was at first no real move to develop an organization beyond the small groups of believers which had arisen spontaneously. The beginnings of the movement as an identifiable religious force can, therefore, be more accurately placed in the 1880s, when the circumstances of the time were particularly propitious for the appearance of a movement so imperialistically oriented. And this has to do with Manifest Destiny and all that jazz. The extent to which the British clergy became aware of the existence of the movement may be gauged by the comment from which Cardinal John Henry Newman made when he was asked why he had left the Church of England in 1845 in order to join the Roman Catholic Church. He said that there was a very real danger that the movement would take over the Church of England. In the late 19th century, Edward Hine, Edward Wheeler, I think that's how you said, Bird, and Herbert Aldersmith developed the British Israelite movement. Hine and Bird achieved a degree of doctrinal coherence by eliminating competing forms of the ideology. In 1878, the Anglo-Ephraim Association of London, which followed Wilson by accepting the broader community of Western European Germanic peoples as fellow Israelites who were also favored by God, was absorbed into Bird's Metropolitan Anglo-Israel Association, which espoused the Anglo-exclusive view promoted by Hine. By 1886, the Anglo-Israel Association had 27 affiliated groups throughout Britain. Hine later departed for the United States, where he promoted the movement. In 1906 edition, the 1906 edition of the Jewish Encyclopedia stated that British Israelism's adherents are said to number 2 million in England and the United States, an unreliable figure if association membership and journal subscription numbers are any guide. The number of passive Protestant sympathizers is almost impossible to determine. Between 1899 and 1902, adherents of British Israelism dug up parts of the Hill of Tara in the belief that the Ark of the Covenant was buried there, doing much damage to one of Ireland's most ancient royal and archaeological sites. At the same time, British Israelism became associated with various pseudo-archaeological pyramidology theories, such as the notion that the Pyramid of Khufu contained a prophetic numerology of the British peoples. In 1914, the 34th year of its publication, the Anglo-Israel Almanac listed the details of a large number of kingdom identity groups which were operating independently throughout the British Isles, as well as in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Canada, and the United States. In 1919, the British Israel World Federation was founded in London, and Covenant Publishing was founded in 1922. William Pascoe Gord was the first director of the publishing house. During this time, several prominent figures patronized the BIWF organization and its publisher. Princess Alice was patron-in-chief prior to World War II. One of the highest profile members was William Massey, the Prime Minister of New England. Due to the expansive nature of the British Empire, believers in British Israelism spread worldwide. Honestly, if you want to look into this more, I think that probably Anthony Buzzard and Sir Anthony Buzzard and his refutations are probably your best source. But let's look at their beliefs. Most Israelites are not Jews. Have you heard this one before? Adherents believe that the 12 tribes of Israel are the 12 sons of the patriarch Jacob, who was later named Israel. Jacob elevated the descendants of Ephraim and Menashe, the two sons of Joseph, to the status of full tribes in their own right, replacing the tribe of Joseph. And Levi. So, like, yeah. A division occurred among the 12 tribes in the days of Yerovam and Rehoboam, with the 3 tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and in part Levi forming the kingdom of Judah, and the remaining 10 tribes forming the kingdom of Israel, Samaria. Okay. Thus, they argue the great bulk of Israelites are not the Jews. Filmer, writing in 1964, suggested that the fact that some Jews continue to search for the 10 lost tribes implies that their representatives are not found among modern-day multi-ethnic Jews. And just to answer the question from a Jewish perspective, the Jewish belief is that when Sancherev, in fact, displaced people, that was also a spiritual event, which made it impossible spiritually to, in fact, know just by someone's birth if they are truly part of the spiritual Israel, the spiritual which spiritual nation they are from. And that's one of the reasons why we would never say that that the way we know if a particular person is in fact Zera Israel or in fact Zera Amalek is in fact how that person acts and what they do, because there was this blinding and confusion caused by Sancherev. And again, this is part of being in the darkness and walking through the valley of the shadow of death. And what part of what Elijah will in fact clarify. A number of British Israelites quote Josephus in order to support their claim that the lost tribes of Israel are not Jews. The entire body of the people of Israel remained in that country. Wherefore, there are but 2 tribes in Asia and Europe subject to the Romans, while the 10 tribes are beyond the Euphrates till now and are an immense multitude. British are descendants from the lost tribes. The key component of British Israelism is the representation of the migration of the lost tribes of Israel. Adherents suggested that the Scythians, Cimmerians, and Goths were representatives of these lost tribes and the progenitors of the later invaders of Britain. John Wilson would argue for the inclusion of all Western European Gothic peoples among the descendants of the Israelites, but under the later influence of Edward Hine, the movement would come to view only the people of the British Isles as having this ancestry. Herodotus reported that the ancient Persians called all the Scythians Seke, but they called themselves Skoloti. However, a modern comparison of the forms which are given in other ancient languages suggests that Skuda was their name. Ancient writers such as Josephus and Jerome would associate the Scythians with the peoples of Gog and Magog. But British Israelist etymologists would see in Seke a name derived from the biblical Isaac, Yitzchak, Seke. Claiming that the appearance of the Scythians, where they claimed the lost tribes were last documented, also supported a connection. Further, British Israelists find support in the superficial resemblance between King Jehu's pointed headdress and that of the captive Saka king, seen to the right on the Behiston Rock. So that is the Behiston Rock, and that is Jehu's crown. And how is that with that of the captive Saka king? Okay. I don't believe I've seen that picture. I'm not sure if it's available. The chain of etymological identification leading from Isaac to the Seke was continued to the Saxons, interpreted as Sax's sons, the sons of Isaac, who are portrayed as invading England from Denmark, the the land of the tribe of Dan. They saw the same tribal name left by the wanderers in the Dardanelles, the Danube, Macedonia, Dunkirk, Dunglow in Ireland, Dundee in Scotland, Sweden, London, and as Dr. Heiser pointed out in his conversation with a vocab, the human mouth only makes so many sounds. And if what you are hoping to do is spend your whole life looking in every single thing for that sounds even a tiny bit alike, guess what? You're going to find it. And ascribed to this lost tribe the mythical Irish Tuatha de Danann. In the name of the British, they saw Berit Ish, referring to the Hebrew covenant with God, which, of course, Berit Ish is backwards. It would be the covenant of man, meaning that it would be a human covenant, right? Brit Ish. So, yeah. Just like a Brit Milah is the covenant of circumcision, right? So Brit Ish would not be a man of the covenant. It's the other way around. It would be the covenant of men. So Bede had linked the Picts to the Scythians, but British Israelists suggested that he had confused the true tribes of Scotland and that it was the Scots, who were one with the Scoloti of Herodotus. They drew particular support from the derivation of the Scots from the Scythians, found in the 1320 declaration of Arbroath, reflecting a tradition related in the 9th century Historia Britonum that the Scots descended from the union of a Scythian exile with Scota, daughter of a pharaoh, a tale found in some form in several of other early 14th century historical and poetic sources. And this is what confirmation bias will do to you. The declaration begins, Most Holy Father and Lord, we know, and from the chronicles and books of the ancients, we find that among other famous nations of our own, the Scots have been graced with widespread renown. They journeyed from Greater Scythia by way of the Tyrian Sea and the Pillar of Hercules, and dwelt for a long course of time in Spain among the most savage tribes, but nowhere could they be subdued by any race, however barbarous. Thence they came 1200 years after the people of Israel crossed the Red Sea to their home in the west, where they still live today. And again, when you disregard all evidence that is to the contrary and try to find any shred of evidence to what you're looking for, guess what? You will, in fact, make a narrative. And yes, it does matter if your narrative is true or not, because the truth matters. Because, as I have said before, truth is something that is eternal, that has legs, that can withstand inquiry, whereas sheker is something that is fallacious, that falls over, that has no permanence to it, and it does matter if things are actually true or not. And yes, we do talk about metaphorical truths, we talk about deeper truths, but the difference between Toratenu HaKedosha, Torat Emet, right, the Torah of truth, is that it not only contains metaphorical truths, it not only contains propositional truths, it is in fact true. That is again that it is Aleph, Mem, Tet, beginning, middle, and end. Emet has the legs, withstands, is able to be from beginning to end. Okay. British Israelite associations cite the declaration as evidence for the link between the Scots and the Scythians, and hence the lost tribes, as has been proposed by the British Israelist etymologists. Other Celtic invaders would be given an analogous descent in the Welsh. The British Israelists would see a direct connection through the Cimbri to the Cimmerians, the Gimeri of Assyrian annals, a name sometimes also given by the ancient Babylonians to the Scythians and Saka. Perceived similarity between this and the name by which the Assyrian annals refer to Israel, Bit Cumri, would lead the British Israelists to claim that the Welsh too were members of the lost tribes. According to the Anglo-Israelists, these claimed connections would make the British the literal descendants of the lost tribes, and thus inheritors of the promises made to the Israelites in the Old Testament. Heard that from anybody else? British throne is a continuation of the Davidic throne. Some adherents further claim that the British royal family is of lineal descent from the house of King David via a daughter of Zedekiah, the last king of Judah. According to this legend, the prophet Jeremiah and his scribe Baruch escaped with the king's daughters, Jeremiah 41:10 and 43:6, to Egypt. They later traveled to Ireland, where one of the surviving Judahite princesses, Titefi, married a local high king of Ireland. From this fabled union, the Davidic throne was supposedly preserved, having been transferred to Ireland, then Scotland, and later England, whence the British monarchs are alleged to have descended. The stone of Scone, which has been used in the coronations of Scottish, English, and British monarchs for centuries, is traditionally claimed to be identical to both the pillow stone, which was used by the biblical patriarch Jacob, and the coronation stone of King David. The stone of Scone. Okay. Where is this thing? It is in Perth, Scotland. Returned to Scotland in 1996 in a symbolic response to growing dissatisfaction among Scots at the prevailing constitutional settlement. The British government decided that the stone should be kept in Scotland when not in use at coronations. On 3 July 1996, Prime Minister John Major announced that to the House of Commons that 700 years after it had been taken, the stone would return to Scotland. On 15 November 1996, after a handover ceremony at the border between representatives of the Home Office and of the Scottish Office, the stone was transported to Edinburgh Castle. An official handover ceremony occurred in the castle on 30 November 1996, St. Andrew's Day, to mark the arrival of the stone. Oh, if I didn't mention, today is actually Pesach Sheni, a second Passover, and there's lots of beautiful things about that as well. Where were we? So, yeah. Britain and the United States are the inheritors of Jacob's birthright. A commonly held British Israel doctrine is the belief that the tribe of Ephraim and the tribe of Menashe can be identified as modern-day Britain and the United States of America. Part of the foundation of the British Israel doctrine is the theological claim that particular blessings were bestowed upon 3 of the tribes of Israel, in that the tribe of Judah was to be the chief ruler, King David, and Ephraim was to receive the birthright. Adherents believe that these blessings have continued down from the ages of modern times, with the British monarchy being identified as the continued blessing upon Judah, and both Britain, Ephraim, and the United States, Menashe, as recipients of the national birthright blessings. They cite passages such as 1 Chronicles 5:1-2 and Genesis 48:19 through 20 in order to support their claims and criticisms. British Israelism has been criticized for its poor scholarship and research and scholarship. In the 1910 edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica, an article which summarizes the theology of British Israelism contained the statement that the theory of British Israelism rests on premises that are deemed by scholars, both theological and anthropological, to be utterly unsound. Current scholarship is not consistent with the claims of British Israelism, with scholars drawing attention to its historical and linguistic inaccuracies In addition to its links to anti-Semitism, Hale refers to the overwhelming cultural, historical, and genetic evidence against it. Critics of British Israelism note that the arguments which are presented by promoters of the teachings are based on unsubstantiated and highly speculative amateur research. Tudor Parfit, author of The Lost Tribes, The History of a Myth, states that the proof cited by adherents of British Israelism is of a feeble composition, even by the low standards of the genre. Some proponents of British Israelism have claimed that numerous links exist between historical linguistics, ancient Hebrew, and various European place names and languages. This can be traced to the works of John Wilson in the 19th century. The self-trained Wilson looked for similarities in the sounds of words and argued that many Scottish, British, and Irish words stemmed from ancient Hebrew words. Wilson's publications inspired the development of British Israel language associations in Europe. Modern scholarly linguistic analysis conclusively shows that the language of the British Isles, English, Welsh, and Gaelic, belong to the Indo-European language family, while Hebrew belonged in the Semitic branch of the Afro-Asiatic language family. In 1906, Lounsbury stated that no trace of the slightest real connection can be discovered between English and ancient Hebrew. While in 1993, Michael Friedman refuted claims that Hebrew was closely related to Celtic and Anglo-Saxon when he wrote that the actual evidence could hardly be any weaker. Others have addressed the specific word relationships proposed. Russell Spittler says of the disputable etymological claims made by the British Israelists that they have no ample basis in linguistic scholarship and are based on coincidences only. William Ingram would present arguments made by British Israelism as examples of tortured etymology. Adherents of British Israelism cite various scriptures in support of the argument that the lost northern Israelite tribes migrated through Europe to end up in Britain. Dumont argues that British Israelists misunderstand and misinterpret the meanings of these scriptures. One such case is the distinction that British Israelists make between the Jews of the southern kingdom and the Israelites of the northern kingdom. They believe that the Bible consistently distinguishes the two groups. Dumont says that many of these scriptures are misinterpreted because after the captivities, the distinction between Jews and Israelites was lost over time, which is correct. British Israelists believe that the northern tribes of Israel lost the identity after the captivity in Assyria, and this is reflected in the Bible. Dumont disagrees with this assertion and argues that only higher-ranking Israelites were deported from Israel and many Israelites remained, which is true. He cites examples from the Assyrian captivity, such as Josiah, king of Judah, who received money from the tribes of Menashe and Ephraim and all the remnant of Israel, 2 Chronicles 34:9, and Hezekiah, who sent invitations not only to Judah, but also to northern Israel for the attendance of a Passover in Jerusalem, 2 Chronicles 30. British Israelites interpret 2 Chronicles 34:9 as referring to Scythians. Dumont is also critical of the interpretations of biblical prophecy embraced by the movement, saying texts are torn from their context and misapplied without the slightest regard to their original meaning. British Israelism rests on linking different ancient populations. This includes linking the lost tribes of Israel with the Scythians, Cimmerians, Celts, and modern Western Europeans, such as the British. To support these links, some adherents believe that similarities exist between various cultural aspects of these population groups, and they argue that these links demonstrate the migration of the lost Israelites in a westerly direction. Examples given include burial customs, metalwork, clothing, dietary customs, and more. Dumont argues that the customs of Scythians and Cimmerians are in contrast to those of ancient Israelites. And he further dismisses the connection between these populations and the Saxons and Celts, particularly criticizing the then current formulations of British Israelism that would interject Semites between the closely related English and Germans. The Scythian origin of the Scots has been referred to as mythical. Algernon Herbert, writing in 1848, characterized the linguistic derivation of Scots from Scoloti as strictly impossible, and Merrill referred to it as false etymology. Addressing their view on the fate of the exiled tribes, Frank Boyes said of their voluminous output, all the effort to write these volumes might well have been saved on the premise that they were never lost, which we believe to be the correct one. Parfit suggests that the creation of British Israelism was inspired by numerous ideological factors, which included a desire of its adherents, many of whom were from ordinary backgrounds, to prove that they had a glorious past, emerging pride in Western imperialism and colonialism, and a belief in the racial superiority of white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. Aiku characterizes the movement as being fundamentally about providing a rationale for Anglo-Saxon superiority. To Kidd, its theology represents a quasi-heresy, which serves to blunt the universalist message apparent in the New Testament. And I have to say that part of this is that there is a racist understanding of the Hebrew Bible by Christians, which Christianity rejects. And what happens is that these racists reject the Christian rejection of their racism, and they then attribute the particular racism that Marcionite Christian belief attributes to the Hebrew Bible as being correct, and then they adopt it. And of course, the Hebrew Bible never taught racism. But the problem a lot of Christians have refuting this stuff is because they do believe in this Marcionite tale of the Old Testament being racist, and then the New Testament, so they can't show that, no, actually, this stuff is completely bankrupt from a Jewish standpoint from the Hebrew Bible itself. And this is how we end up with Paul within Judaism, which tries to teach that Paul was in fact teaching what the Hebrew Bible has always taught, which is preferable to Christians recognizing the truth about Paul. Sorry, that was my little dig. The God I know. Hello, you are new here. I don't know you. They often adopt ideas they say they are against. This is very true. This is very true. This is the funniest part. It's like the Black Hebrew Israelites are obviously racists, and they use racist as some sort of pejorative. And it's like, you're actual racists. So you're insulting me by saying that I agree with you. And while I do take it as an insult, why do you take it as an insult? Anyway, where were we? its role in fostering anti-Semitism in conservative Protestant Christianity has been noted by historians, along with its role in fostering a feeling of racial chauvinism, which is not always covert. Separately, the mythology of British Israelism has been characterized by historians fostering nationalistic bellicosity. To some adherents, British Israelism served as a justification for British imperialism and American settler colonialism, along with the subsequently displacement of indigenous peoples, which followed. Influences on other movements. British Israelism, along with explicitly racist Anglo-Saxon triumphalism, were growing rapidly in England as the American-based Latter-day Saints movement launched their first mission to England. British Israelist ideas can be seen influencing Mormon thought by the 1850s, with several British Israelist proponents cited for an Anglo-Saxon and Israelite origin for most Mormons in British Mormon publications of the 1870s, and these concepts were synthesized into general Mormon discourse. And you'll notice that it's all over Mormonism as well. Pentecostalism. Several individuals influential in the foundation of Pentecostalism embraced the tenets of British Israelism. The British Israel inspired self-identification of Anglo-Saxon peoples with the Jewish nation, and the promises made them by their God would contribute significantly to the view held by several proto and early Pentecostals that they would hold a central role in the end times. Notable among these was John Alexander Dowie. I don't know who this man is. Okay. Who would speak of plans for Anglo-Saxon Christians to take control of Jerusalem in order to prepare for the second coming. This legacy could be continued by Charles Fox Parham, who instead saw the lost tribes joining their Jewish brethren to reestablish the nation of Israel. His view of the lost tribes was more expansive than Dowie's, including in addition to the Anglo-Saxons, Scandinavians, Danes, High Germans, and even Hindus and Japanese, who, according to Parham, had acquired the blood of Abraham through intermarriage and hence were eligible to take part in the end time drama. British Israelists' beliefs would soon be marginalized in the movement, but its influence could still be seen in the teachings of several key leaders in the mid-20th century. Herbert W. Armstrong. Beginning in the 1960s, the teaching of British Israelism was vigorously promoted by Herbert W. Armstrong, founder and pastor of the Worldwide Church of God. And we have some members of our community who come from that. Armstrong believed that the teaching was a key to understanding biblical prophecy. One might ask, were not biblical prophecies closed and sealed? Indeed, they were until now, and even now they can be understood only by those who possess the master key to unlock them. Does this sound familiar? Armstrong believed that he was called by God to proclaim the prophecies of the lost tribes of Israel before the end times. Armstrong's belief caused his separation from the Church of God the Seventh Day because of its refusal to adopt the teaching. Armstrong created his own church, first named the Radio Church of God, and later renamed Worldwide Church of God. He described British Israelism as a central plank of his theology. After Armstrong's death, his former church abandoned its belief in British Israelism and changed its name to Grace Communion International in 2000. Church members who disagreed and made another one. Armstrong promoted other genealogical history theories, such as the belief that modern-day Germany represents ancient Assyria. Okay. Writing, the Assyrians settled in Central Europe, and the Germans undoubtedly are in part the descendants of the ancient Assyrians. Now, Christian identity are the white supremacists who are very much active today in American white supremacy movement. They disagree with the neo-Nazis because of their but here you'll see. Early British Israelites such as Edward Hine and John Wilson were Philo-Semites. And like I have said many times before, Philo-Semitism is in fact a form of and precursor to anti-Semitism, because what happens is that you start with your racism, which fetishizes Jews and doesn't view human beings as individuals. And this sort of fetishist view lends itself to racism in general. So that's why all forms of group, even what's viewed as a benevolent racism, is a bad idea. God. British Israelism had several Jewish adherents, and it also received support from rabbis throughout the 19th century. I'm telling you, Philo-Semitism is a problem, but whatever. Nobody likes to listen to me. Within British politics, the movement supported Benjamin Disraeli, who was descended from Sephardi Jews, while they also favored Theodor Herzl's advocacy of Zionism. Still, an anti-Semitic strain existed below the surface, such as the scientific racialism that led Wilson to deny the racial purity of modern-day Jews, leading some within the movement to adopt the belief that modern-day Jews were unsemitic imposters. Heard that before? Some American adherents of British Israelism would later adopt a racialized, strongly anti-Semitic theology that became known as Christian identity, which has as its core the belief that non-Caucasian people have no souls and therefore cannot be saved. Since its emergence in the 1920s, Christian identity has taught the belief that Jews are not descended from the tribe of Judah. Instead, some Christian identity adherents believe that Jews are descended from Satan and Lilith, see serpent seed, and that's the whole Kenites thing, while others believe that the Jews are descended from, can you guess? Edomite Khazars. See, Khazar hypothesis of Ashkenazi ancestry. Their adoption of the British Israelist belief that the Israelite-derived Anglo-Saxons have been favored by God over the impure modern Jews meant that a reluctantly anti-Semitic Klansman could now maintain his anti-Semitism and at the same time revere a Bible cleansed of its Jewish taint. Does this sound familiar? The arrival of British Israelism in the United States contributed to the transition of prior anti-Semitic notions into the Christian identity movement. One of the leading proponents of the movement after World War II, Reverend Wesley A. Swift, went from leading several Los Angeles Anglo-Israelite institutions to founding the Anglo-Saxon Christian congregation, later renamed the Church of Jesus Christ Christian, which became Christian Identity's main mouthpiece. And then there's also positive Christianity, and all of these things are all related. And honestly, I'm getting tired of talking about these idiots. but what can you do? So if people want to chat, um, if you know me and you want to come on, or even if you don't know me and you want to come on, please do. Otherwise, I am going to check email and stuff. Mm. Do you feel bloodline or adherence to Torah is more important? Obviously, all that matters is a person's emunah, faith in God, which is demonstrated by the fruits of that faith, which is their works. The idea that salvation is inherited is a completely refuted in its entirety by Judaism in the Hebrew Bible before Jesus. And this is the precise problem that we have here. Christians, in their Marcionite hatred of Judaism, misinterpret the Hebrew Bible to teach that people are saved by their bloodline or even by their adherence to Torah, which is, again, a misframing of what Judaism actually teaches, right? And then what happens is people reject Christianity and sometimes go and then read their Marcionism, and they actually start believing in their Old Testament God that they were taught by Christianity, which is obviously abhorrent, and it's all wrong. I mean, my channel spends a lot of time on this. I don't know how many times I've discussed this. So, yeah. Karen's old man. To love is to give to others without expecting anything in return and not bragging about it. This is very true. I am a Christian and I do not hate Jewish people at all. Well, I'm glad. Well, but didn't you say that your mother was Jewish? I thought that was what you said on Friday. Hey, puppy. Come. Come. People want to see you. Come say hi. Come say hi. No, you don't want to say hi? Okay, don't say hi. Well, hopefully we'll be able to save you from that. That does happen. Yes. My friend Mark Nahi is from Iran. He came as a very similar story to mine. Very similar story to mine. Of course, I came here after the revolution. We came in 1985. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no. I have family who do, and they claim it's safe, and it's like, no, I would never. I wouldn't subject myself to any Muslim government. Thank you so much, Karen's old man. Actually, so I heard of her just today, and I googled her, and found. I mean, it's not a name I really know, and not really comfortable talking about it without knowing much. Huh. I went to Reseda High School for summer school one year. Um, I mean, I don't know her. I don't know if I blame her for anything. Honestly, I mean, this is a complicated issue. I am probably going to leave in another 25 minutes. No, I went to summer school because I was that much of a nerd. I am going to go get myself some tea and stuff. You guys can watch. Uh, you can watch my puppy. Did you guys miss me? Puppies, yes. My puppy is actually here with me today because she misbehaved on Friday when I wasn't home because um, the neighbor kids were throwing things at our window. So, I mean, they're kids, but still, they throw things at our window to taunt Happy, which is a dumb thing to do because she's an 80-pound Rottweiler, and it's a very dumb thing to taunt an 80-pound Rottweiler, yet they do it. Uh, Honestly, seriously, you gonna go there? Sorry, not gonna go there with you. People throw things. I've seen people of all castes misbehave as children. That's what children do. And I've seen all manner of people not mature. That's that's different. You really should look into the work of Michael Schellenberger. I am hoping he does well in the elections, which reminds me I have to send my ballot in. I do wonder how he's doing in the polls. There has been no public polling in the race. Great. Uh, no, we were talking about kids. You really need to look into Michael Schellenberger. Highly recommend it. He is a great, great improvement over what we are dealing with in terms of both intellectuals and politicians. You really need to look into Michael Schallenberger. His book San Francisco. Um, and he's done lots of interviews. He's running for governor. He's definitely my candidate and my hope for a person who to win governor. Yeah, San Francisco. Yeah. Whip it good. I have no idea what you're saying. But welcome. I don't think you've been here before. What was the name of that? Devo? Yeah, Devo. I am, in fact, old. Yes, I am very, very old. Okay, people, it is 6 o'clock. Um, I will see you guys later. Uh, Probably, I don't know, Wednesday or Thursday. I am going to, uh, again, this time actually do my whole thing of absolutely destroying Zion Lex. But I was here for 3 hours when he could have come on, but of course he didn't. And I will make another similar stream, which I am willing to move to whatever hour he needs so he can come on. Later, people.